Well, we've got warm weather up and down the eastern seaboard for the most part. There were a few exceptions here and there, but we're heading for record highs for Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised if some places even hit all-time highs for the month of November. Showers and a few thunderstorms up and down the middle of the country. We've got tropical storm Rafael on the verge of becoming a hurricane. And we have breaking news tonight, Joe. The polls are being kept open in a number of counties around the country, not for technical issues, but so that they could watch the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And you can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We've got the Amazon referral link pinned to the top of the chat board, and it's also on the description of this video. It's very easy. Just do your shopping, use the affiliate link, and Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin. You get your stuff. It doesn't cost you an extra cent, and everybody leaves happy. So we appreciate whatever support you can give us shopping on Amazon. So here we are, and we've got this rain thing. I don't know if anybody actually remembers it, what that is. But we've got this rain risk for Sunday, and a lot of it hinges on Rafael. Because if I was noticing, Joe, on some of the overnight guidance, some of the models, the European, the Icon, uh, tried to take it straight west in the Gulf of Mexico, coming nowhere near the Gulf Coast, just basically moving west and falling apart. If that were to happen, the tropical moisture from this would not get involved with the cold front. And if you looked at the European today, it barely gives any rain for Sunday. On the other hand, the GFS and a number of the hurricane tracking models seem to be lined up with the idea that whatever is left of Rafael is going to get absorbed by this low in the central plains, and that we will get some rain on Sunday into Sunday night.
Well, it certainly is not going to be a drought buster.
Oh
So,
God, no! I mean,
I mean,
we're going to put a lot of energy in for probably a quarter of an inch of rain.
yeah, yeah, and I noticed that the reservoir level is down to about 68%, which is on the low side for the early part of November. But again, if you figure, how dry it was during September and especially so October, you'd have to expect something like that. And now here we are, 5 days into November. What have we seen so far? A couple of raindrops. That's about it.
I know it's really been pathetic. Atlanta has gone for the first time. 1870 records go back to 1878, the month of October. No measurable rain. That has never happened before
Wow.
in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlantic City today is now 36 days in a row with no measurable rain. That is a new record. And except for the fact that New York City got that, what was it, a 1/100th of an inch of
One
rain
one
on
one
that day.
hundredth, but 1/100th. But Newark Airport had no measurable rain, and LaGuardia and JFK, like Central Park, only had 1/100th of an inch in October.
Oh well, this cannot last forever, folks. It's eventually going to break down. We don't seem to know when, but eventually this pattern is going to break down. Welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board. Welcome to those of you watching in the background, or just lurking about, as I'd like to say, and all the any new viewers to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We are here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35, and we are also occasionally on a Friday or a Saturday if there's a storm around, and we always let you know ahead of time if we're adding a show or subtracting a show. So make sure you subscribe, turn your notifications on, and if you like the show, please, by all means, hit the like button. So there you go. Snows, Joe, big snows in New Mexico being forecast with this next weather system, and even into parts of going up into Colorado. I was looking at, in fact, I'll bring it up on the screen because they've got all sorts of winter storm watches up out in the southern Rockies there, and we'll take a look. This is a snowfall forecast for New Mexico. Just looking over New Mexico, I'll give it a little close up. Uh, except for the southeastern and southernmost part of the state. They've got some pretty big numbers in for Santa Fe and even a couple of inches in Albuquerque. Although to the east of there, in one of the ranges, we're talking probably a foot and a half plus. And I don't know where that is off. What is it? I can't read the Route 64 in New Mexico in the northern part of the state. They got a 32 print there. So we're talking some big snows.
Yeah, don't forget that it was just a few weeks ago that part of New Mexico had, I think it was record rainfall for the entire month of October. While we were in the drought, or while we were seeing the lack of any rain, parts of New Mexico got battered with heavy rain. And now here you're talking about significant snowfall into the early part of the month of November. So do weather change? It do.
It does. All right, let's take a look at Rafael, which is on the verge of becoming a hurricane. And you can see on the satellite loop that it has been getting better organized all day long. Now, overnight and into tomorrow morning, before it goes over western Cuba, conditions are actually quite favorable for rapid strengthening. So we're going to be interesting to see how strong this winds up getting before it makes landfall. I know the Hurricane Center has been kind of holding on the idea of maybe 80 or 85 miles an hour at the peak, but I think there's an outside chance that it could go a little bit higher. I don't think it makes any difference as far as what's going to happen in the long term because I still think once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico and gets north of 25 degrees north, it's going to have to deal with dry air. It's going to have to deal with wind shear and cooler Gulf of Mexico water temperatures as they've had a couple of fronts pass through in the last couple of weeks. So that takes its toll. And then just, of course, the fact that the daylight is shrinking, so the waters are just naturally cooling, regardless of air mass. We'll check out the recon. I do have the latest there's a recon there right now, and they've got one fix here. This was at actually just about 10 minutes ago. The first fix was earlier. It was at 989 millibars. It just sort of, they're whipping the plane around for the next fix. I'm noticing a couple of red barbs there of 55 to 60, and I don't see any 60 to 64, at least on the first pass that they had. And let me just go back. We'll bring up the graph because that usually tells you what they're finding at flight level. So at flight level, they've got a pressure down, looks like around 986. So a 3 millibar drop on the second fix, and a peak flight level wind at about 80 knots. So it's almost there. I mean, it they probably will make it a hurricane on the 10 o'clock advisory.
I think they did. I think it is a hurricane, Joe.
Did they?
I'm just,
Oh, yes, they did. I'm sorry. They did. They actually sent out the advisory at 7, and then they sent out an update at 7:20. I guess based on that second fix, recon data indicates that Rafael has become a hurricane. Okay, I stand corrected. Maximum wind 75 miles an hour. Lowest pressure 986 millibars, 29.11 inches. So I guess I got that right. 19.4 north, 79.9 west, which is 20 miles southeast of Little Cayman, or 305 miles southeast of Havana, Cuba. Moving northwest at 325 degrees at 15 miles an hour. So it's kind of chugging along as it heads up into the Northwest Caribbean. And since I got the map up, they do start to talk about disturbed weather that's sitting northeast of the Leeward Islands. That's going to extend itself westward toward and north of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic over the next few days. 20% chances could form in the next 48 hours, 30% over the next 7 days, and acknowledging that uh, some slow development is possible during the latter part of this week while it moves generally westward, passing near or north of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and then approaching the southeastern Bahamas by Friday. So who knows? The models have been, occasionally, some of the models have been trying to spin that up into a small tropical storm or at least they did over the last couple of days. All right, so we've got a few things going on as far as watches and warnings are concerned. The dry conditions have led to red flag warnings for all of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. So there's that. And that takes care of the eastern part of the United States. Winter storm watches for a whole bunch of counties in New Mexico. We've got winter weather advisories for a whole bunch of counties in the western part of Colorado. And then into the northeastern part, we've got a number of counties that have winter storm warnings up. We also have winter storm warnings up for north central Montana with advisories forecast on either side. And if we go to the, so I'll go back to the snow map and you can take a look here. So we take a look at Colorado. See, the heaviest snow is actually, this is kind of funny. They've got the winter storm warnings up for this patch of heavier snow in northeastern Colorado. They don't have it up for southeastern Colorado where the amounts are, they got 16 prints and 22 prints here. Uh, whatever their criteria is, I'm not quite sure. In fact, now that they've piqued my curiosity, they've got two counties in southeast Colorado with winter storm watches. And then they've got advisories. So let's see what the watches. I'm sorry, winter storm and some winter storm warnings. I think the maps aren't matching up here. What is going on? Uh, Hold on.
It's
So
technology,
yeah, it's always technology. Okay, so they're going for 6 to 9 in those winter storm warning counties in Colorado, in southeast Colorado. In the advisory area, they're going for between 3 and 7. Okay, so that's what they're doing. In California, not to leave the California folks out, we've got some wind advisories in Southern California. We've got some red flag warnings among some of the coastal counties going all the way up to San Francisco. And as we check out tonight's satellite loop, not unlike last night when we had a ton of thunderstorms going on, there's some going on here, but there's most of them are actually out in the western Gulf of Mexico. And also you could see the twisting motion that's with the shortwave that's digging down into Utah and Colorado. So this is going to be the big snowmaker there. It's amazing how dry it is in the east, though. I mean, this eastern ridge has become semi-permanent, it seems.
well, eventually something is going to break it down or move it out, but whenever that happens, it's not happening in the foreseeable or in the immediate future. No question. It's going to stay for a while, and yeah, that's why the presence of that, and even after this weak front moves on by later this week, temperatures aren't going to go back to normal or even below normal. They're going to be still. It'll be cooler than what we're going to see tomorrow, but still, by in terms of mean or average temperatures, still a bit above normal.
Oh, I know. Um, just to go over it again, if Rafael tracks like this, where it goes somewhere into the central Gulf Coast, it's going to get this upper low to the west as it, swings around and dives down and causes a storm to form in the central plains, and that'll eventually go up into the Great Lakes. The moisture from this would wind up getting fed up through part of the Gulf states and parts of the southeast, and eventually gets involved with the front, and we that's how we'll get that rain the models are sub-models are forecasting for Sunday. And on the other hand, if you wind up with a track where it goes to the west and just heads out into the western Gulf, and that tropical moisture does not get involved, you could wind up with another dry cold front coming through. I'm going to lean on the idea, though, that it's going to go up toward the central Gulf Coast. And if we, look at the hurricane tracking models, which earlier today were all over the place. I mean, the spread was huge in the late part of the forecast period. Uh, but now they seem to have gotten much closer together, and the vast majority of them, all but two, take it into southeast Louisiana, and then on northeastward from there. So if you're hoping for some rain, that's how you're going to get it. And by the way, there's no danger here of a surviving core that produces 6, 7, or 8 inches of rain in a very short period of time. This is just going to basically get strewn apart and get absorbed by the developing non-tropical low to its northwest. So this is not going to be a huge deal, I think, when it comes to rainfall for most places.
But every little bit helps.
Oh yeah. Now, I'm specifically referring to places from the mid-Atlantic Northeast. Now, there's going to be heavy rains along the Gulf Coast and in the Southeast. You can see on WPC's forecast. Actually, if you look at WPC's forecast map, they're not even showing a lot of rain for South Louisiana. They've got more rain in Georgia and South Carolina as that moisture feed gets up there, and they've got more rain from Western Kentucky down into northwest Mississippi, where they're showing, several to 6 inches in some places, but they've got a big, gigantic hole in southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi. I mean, barely a quarter to a half inch here. So, again, this is a these late season systems oftentimes wind up not doing very much, even if they make landfall on the U.S.
Well, we don't want, I mean, like that area, that region that you just spoke of, certainly had more than its fair share with Helene and oh my goodness, we've had so many of late, and I've already forgotten now. What was the storm?
Milton.
Milton, Milton Berle. Yeah, so they're not in desperate need of any kind of, more heavy rainfall. It's up here in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast where we're beginning to see problems in terms of rainfall down. This is not good when you, especially as you're heading into the winter season. Of course, you'll need the winter snows to help replenish a lot of this moisture that we have not had so far in recent weeks and months. But anyway, that's the story. And tomorrow again, near record temperatures, or possibly, as you pointed out, Joe, tomorrow we may actually see in a few places the all-time record for high temperatures in November. I'll tell you this much: tonight here in the lower Hudson Valley, we're going to have an exceptionally balmy, if not downright warm night for early November. Temperatures across the area tonight, I'm calling for lows tonight of 57 to 62. Consider, if
Jesus.
you will,
That should be your high for the day.
well, actually, it's even above the high. The
Yeah,
high, the high at this time of the year is about 53, 54, and here we're calling, or at least I'm calling for lows tonight within a few degrees of 60. Ridiculous. And then tomorrow, the record high at the Westchester Airport, 74, set in 2022.
that's gone.
I'm not sure. The airport. They say it's in White Plains. It's really in Harrison, and Harrison tends to get a
Sea
cool
breeze.
breeze off of the Long Island Sound, and the winds tomorrow are going to be from a southerly direction, southwesterly direction. So that may help to cool things off a bit.
I think Frank Scalera put it in perspective here. He was at Home Depot earlier buying Christmas lights, and he had on shorts and sandals. Here we are in November. I mean, it
We
really is.
have the station here in the Hudson Valley, WHUD 100.7 FM, started playing 24/7 Christmas music the day after Halloween. I was
Yeah,
sitting at, was sitting in our kitchen this morning. The temperature was heading for 70, and I flick on the radio and I'm hearing Perry Como singing a Christmas song, and I'm saying to Renata, I said, "This doesn't feel right, does it?"
no.
And at the Home Depot, I had to go to Home Depot to get some two-cycle oil. That's the oil that you mix with the gas, so that if you have certain things like a weed whacker or a leaf blower, you need to put that into the gas in order to have that machine run properly. And I was running low, so I said, going down to the Home Depot, and I went to the spot where the two-cycle oil usually is. It's not there. You know why? They've changed everything, the whole configuration. Everything is Christmas now.
Christmas. Yeah,
It's
I know.
crazy.
I
It's
was there.
crazy.
I was there today too. I noticed it. Big precip, by the way, for western and central Kansas, the western half, most of a good chunk of Oklahoma, and much of north central and northwest Texas, an inch and a half to maybe as much as 3 inches over the next 7 days. Also, big rain amounts of several to 6 inches or more from northwestern California all the way up to northwestern Washington and beyond to the Canada side. And in the Northeast, from Maine to North Carolina, it's generally a tenth to a quarter. So again, uh, this is about as good as we're going to get here with regards to this particular weather system. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll outperform, but when you're in a dry pattern, dry begets dry. Just like when you're in a wet pattern, wet begets wet. So if anything, you wind up less than what you think you're going to get. The Storm Prediction Center tonight has a couple of areas of marginal risk, very narrow. Western Louisiana, northeast to southern Indiana, and also a small area in southern Wisconsin. Tomorrow, the risk is going to be in Florida, marginal risk in South Florida, and a slight risk over the Florida Keys. And there's a 2 to 5% tornado risk in that, and of course that's because of Hurricane Rafael. And for Thursday into Friday, we've got an area of marginal risk in central Texas, and that's just about it. So uh, let's uh, let's take a look at what the GFS is doing here on its most recent run, and you can follow along here. You can see Rafael going over western Cuba, weather front coming through Wednesday evening. All it does is shift the wind a little bit,
Are you
maybe a
there?
few clouds. I'm sorry,
I
it
thought,
was
I thought for a second we lost you.
oh no, I'm here. Just a few clouds. And then, as Joe pointed out, I mean, the air behind this front well, it's just a little cooler, but it's still relatively warm. And Raphael goes up. Here's, yes, it goes up into southeast Louisiana. The low in the Central Plains heads up to the Great Lakes. It does show an area of rain that moves into Ohio and in Pennsylvania over in by now it's slower. It was bringing all this rain Sunday morning. Now it's got much of the day, at least Sunday morning, dry, and rain coming in late Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, into early Monday morning. So it's a little bit slower. I think it's because it's taking this Colorado low and running it out faster than it did on prior runs. So that's not a good sign because that leaves a lot, some of the the tropical moisture with Raphael. It leaves a lot of it behind. But we'll see what the models do on in the next couple of days. And then, of course, next week winds up being dry until another weather front late in the week, and then that one comes falls apart and is dry. And after that, there's something else that doesn't look all that impressive, and you got actually a colder high that comes down behind that one. Big deal. And then things start moving along. Things start chugging along a bit better. As always, late in the forecast period, you start to see some signs that things may begin to change. Now we're at November 21st, and we still have a southeast ridge, but there is some kind of storm to the western Great Lakes, and this will be gone on the next run anyway. So uh, there's just not a whole lot here that suggests that our dry weather pattern for the most part is going to break down anytime soon.
And there you go.
Of course, if we use the 12Z run, I know I'm using an off hours run. In the long range, they're just as good as the main runs. It doesn't really matter too much. On this one, on the 12Z run, you can see even on the 12Z run, the plains low runs out faster. You get a little bit more of the tropical moisture involved, but not a lot. And the rain also on this one holds off. On this run holds off until late Sunday night into Monday morning. So pick your poison. They both come out. You wind up dead either way. And some kind of big ocean storm that the 12Z run was forming today, but it's way out in the Atlantic. And yeah, again, there's nothing here to me that suggests anything with regards to any kind of major changes coming anytime soon. Excuse me. We could check Ann Sambles. Should we check her and see what she says at
Why not?
500? Well, there's still a ridge. There it is. Ridge in the east. We're at this coming weekend. Weather system that we get comes over the top of that ridge. It just flattens it out, only to have it pop up again. And then it's popped up again. And we go into the long range and it's still there. I mean, it's just endless. It's absolutely endless. So, like you said, it's got to break eventually, but eventually can be a long. I mean, usually 8 weeks is about the limit for a pattern, but we've been in this already for almost 9 weeks. It's been like this since the beginning of September.
Right. And today, by the way, besides being election day, today is also the midpoint of autumn, believe it or not. So we've already gone halfway through the autumn season.
It was actually cooler in September and the first part of October than it is now, when you think about it. All right, let's do some Briller Jeopardy, shall we?
Now you must have it because I don't think I have a
I
new.
have it. I have it. Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. I was
Um,
wondering.
Okay, so we're now with November records. The highest temperature ever recorded in November at Central Park is
Has it ever hit? I think it has hit 80 at least once, and I think it was in 1950. I'll say 80 degrees.
you got the year right. I'm very impressed that you got the year right. But Mr. Ruben Fairchild gets the temperature right, as does Frank Scalera. 84 on November 1st, 1950. Now, I think 84 might be pushing it for tomorrow, but it still might it may get close though. It may get to 81 or 2. Um,
1950 was it was the year of probably one of the most destructive storms ever in the New York metropolitan area. And November 24, 25, 1950, there was some places in New York, Joe, in the city that had wind gusts to like 100 miles an hour. And in parts of West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania, they had something like 30 or 40 inches of snow.
yeah,
It was
I remember looking at that, and in fact, the temperatures in Michigan were like double digit below zero from that, and it was in the 60s on the east side of the on the east side of the storm, which is what you're describing.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was an absolute animal on the surface map. What was the lowest temperature ever recorded?
Oh dear. I'll say it would have to be late in the month. So I will say 25.
Oh, you're right about the late in the month. You're not even close with the temperature. You're you're not even in you're in some other zip code. That's how off you are. And everybody on the chat board, you're all too high. You're all too high. Let me help you out. It's a single digit.
Good Lord, it got down that
Si-
low? It has
It's
to
a
be in the late. It has to be like in the late 19th century then.
1875.
Yeah.
7 is close. Mike Waterhouse Bonsai, 6 is closer. Craig Carlberg and Norm Roberts, 6 is closer. Michael McGuire, 4 is just below it, which leaves Paul Roman in the process of elimination at 5 above zero on November 30th, 1875. And
Wow.
I would bet good money that um, it warmed up and rained 3 days later.
Yeah.
So there. Uh, um, the lowest daytime maximum temperature, and it was on the same day, clearly. So the lowest daytime high.
21.
No, it's not way too high, but it's too high. Keep going down, Chuck Cardillo. Lower, higher, lower, higher, higher, lower, lower. Everybody's Christinapedia, you need to go higher. It's like the clock game. Everybody else needs to go lower. 16, lower, lower. Mike Waterhouse Bonsai, 14 on that same day, November 30th, 1875. Greatest monthly snowfall.
Well, we know that the greatest monthly snowfall in October was 2.2 inches, and I remember a couple of cases. I think one in 1987 that some really significant or heavy snow fell in the tri-state area. Ah, God, that's and what did we have? November 15th. We had that year. What was it, about
Six.
2018?
Yeah,
We had like
six.
6 inches of snow.
3 to 6.
Was that could that have been the heaviest?
No.
Oh no. We're talking about
No.
Central Park now.
Yes. And everybody's guesses on the chat boards, you're all too low. Okay. So you don't need to go higher. Craig Carlberg, you don't need to go a lot higher. Uh-huh. Okay, so Mike Waterhouse Bonsai, now you're too high. Frank Scalera, you're too high. Split the difference. Frank R., you're on the doorstep at 18.
Wow.
You're on the doorstep at 18. The answer is 19, Mike Waterhouse Bonsai again. Give Mike Waterhouse Bonsai a ring of the bell. Can you find the bell, Joe? Ding-a-ling-a-ling. Yes,
Ding, ding, ding.
19 inches in 1898. That's impressive.
It is.
It's not going to happen this year. Anyhow. All right, you know what? It's election night, and you're right. Everybody's watching the election return. So if you haven't voted, you're running out of time. Some states you've already run out of time. So on that note, we will say good night, and we will see everybody tomorrow at 7:35 p.m.
That's
Right,
right.
Joe?
Good night, folks. Have
Night,
try to
night.
stay calm tonight.
Good
Do,
night.
do not lose your temper. Bugs wants to say good night too. Don't you, Bugs? Eh, good night, folks.
Yes, good night.